Hi, I'm Helena and I'm building a language learning app. But before I dive into the how and why of it, I want to share my own language journey, one that started in Inner Mongolia and ended up taking me halfway around the world. I grew up in Ordos, Inner Mongolia, where different languages were always mixed together. At home, we mainly spoke Mongolian, specifically a local dialect that's pretty close to Older Mongolian. In my neighborhood, which was mostly Han Chinese, we used the local Chinese dialect, and at school, I learned all my subjects from math to chemistry in Mongolian. We did have Mandarin as a separate subject, but since everyone around me already spoke some form of Chinese, picking it up felt supernatural. By the time I was a teenager, juggling multiple languages became second nature. I used Mongolian in class and in Mongolian community. Switched to the local Chinese dialect in Han Chinese community and just flowed between them all day long. Also, Mongolian and Chinese are really different languages, which I think is what sparked my interest in languages in the first place. My grandparents and aunts never really went to school, so their Chinese was pretty limited, just enough to get by with the workers from the local mines or to do some shopping downtown. As a kid, I spent my summers at the ranch and often found myself acting as the go-between. Imagine a scorching afternoon. I'm standing between my grandma, who only speaks Mongolian, and a Han Chinese worker who doesn't know a word of Mongolian. I had to translate each of their sentences into something the other could understand. It wasn't easy, but it really showed me how language can break down barriers, clear up misunderstandings, and bring people closer. Later, I learned English in school. This time it was a more traditional experience, textbooks with words and grammars, exercises, exams. Every millennial in China went through this. We've been learning English since we were 7. We may dream about English grammar, but speaking is always the hardest part. I started to browse Facebook to track down Justin Bieber to see if he's dating Selena Gomez back then. I still remember the account replying to my comment, "We're just hanging out." This is the type of expression you'd never see in a textbook. I discovered that English connected me to an entire global world of media, friends, and opportunities. I started to prepare for my TOEFL exam and SAT exams for chemistry, US history, and math. It was only then I started to look at English as a tool, as many languages should be. English was my getaway language, pushing me beyond my hometown and sparking my curiosity about other cultures. Then came Russian at university, another leap. I studied Russian literature and finance as my majors in Shanghai International Studies University. Since the curriculum has a limited time of 4 years, we had to learn the language quick enough to understand the nuances and be able to enjoy Russian masterpieces in literature. New alphabets, new sounds. The first 2 years was so painful. I was introduced to new and super complicated grammar terms, but I was lucky because it suddenly reminded me of Mongolian grammar. The textbooks were old. They were from 90s. Since you have people calling each other comrades in the text. One thing I remember really well is that our professors would let us memorize the whole text and have it as exams, or show us movie clips and let us watch several times before letting us paraphrase. But before I met my friend on Hello Talk, my Russian sounded like a babushka because the phrases and words I used to use were just so formal. My best friend Chimit, she's so patient and kind, who helped me a lot with my Russian. Since she's Buryat, we have a lot in common, so sometimes we discuss the similarities and difference in our dialects. But of course, during this time, I watched a lot of Russian films, series, and YouTube videos. I tried to sound authentic as possible, and I also wanted to read Russian masterpieces in its original form, which I did later. I went to Moscow several times, and that also helped me understand the cultural perspective. Now I live in France, and French became my next challenge. Before I came to France, I started off in a very bookish way, working through grammar and vocabulary guides. On paper, I understood the rules because in some way French also resembles to Russian. But I couldn't really speak. I just felt not really at ease to pronounce. Pronounce French the French way. Then life pushed me out of my comfort zone. My ex-boyfriend spoke no English when he was mad, and if I wanted to make my point clear in an argument, I had to speak French. It was like being thrown into the deep end of a language pool. No more quietly rehearsed lines. I had to express myself in the heat of the moment.
Ahmed!
Excusez-moi! Excusez-moi, Kylian Mbappé. Kylian Mbappé. Je m'appelle Croissant.
Beyond that, I immersed myself in French media. Again, movies, series, YouTube channels by native speakers. Working in French companies meant I had to understand office gossip, catch subtle hints in meetings, and give presentations that didn't just make sense, they had to feel natural. Each hurdle, each awkward exchange forced me to refine my French. Language again proved to be about connection and adaptation, whether in a family ranch scenario or a corporate boardroom in Paris. I've learned that mistakes and misunderstandings aren't failures, they're part of the process, whether it's mixing up words in Russian or tripping over French idioms while trying to sound calm during a heated discussion. These moments taught me that language learning is never just about memorizing words. It's about real-life challenges, emotions, sometimes getting it hilariously wrong before getting it right. At the beginning of last year, I tried to learn Spanish, and of course, I was a Duolingo Pro member for a year, but I found that I haven't learned anything systematic throughout the year. Its passive aggressiveness just doesn't work for me. The streak doesn't matter for me at all. I don't like the game-like design and the sound. If I turn it off, I don't feel as fulfilling as it was, but I keep it on. It's kind of annoying, but I couldn't help it. Also, I think filling in blanks with word puzzles and translating a sentence are the worst ways to learn a language. I think you should not associate an existing language to your native language because it's not efficient and it's tiring. I feel like when Duolingo asks you to speak to pass the quiz, you can pass by saying whatever you want. Nevertheless, I think Duolingo was great for learning Japanese because you can learn how to write in the software, and I really appreciated that. Learning katakana and hiragana in Duolingo is recommended. In general, I think Duolingo is just a language learning app that makes you think you learned by keeping you stay there as long as possible. But only you know if it's really working or just a waste of time. Through all these experiences, I've realized that traditional language learning tools often feel too rigid, too detached from real life. I want to build something different, something that captures the messy human nature of learning a new language. I envision an app that feels less like a grammar drill and more like stepping into a lively conversation. This video is the start of my building in public journey. I will share my progress, brainstorm features with you, and incorporate the lessons I've learned from all these languages. Language lets us bridge worlds, resolve conflicts, blend into new communities, and discover corners of ourselves we never knew existed. That's the essence I want to pour into my app. If you're curious about how I will bring it to life, or if you've ever struggled to learn a language and wanted a more human approach, stick around. There's a lot more to come, and I'm excited to take you along on this journey.